Correct. Good? You figured it out?
Let me make sure that I actually see it on my phone.
Jeez, that's tough, you know. You need the Chassidish Chevra to do this, and it always ends up. You should just know, if anything you need a Chassidish Chevra one. Yeah. There'll be a lot of people that are very happy with you. Okay. We're holding Mishnah Tess. Okay, let's make sure. Perikal of Mishnah Tess. Good? Okay, excellent. Shkoyach. Many, yeah? Yeah. Okay. Perik Aleph, Mishnah Tess. We're holding Mishnah Tess. So now it's going to describe, it said already before, earlier it said, that it spoke about the Essa spheres, and it said that it's Oimek Roim, Oimek Tachas, Oimek Rashis, gave it the 10 Minamakim, the 10 depths. Now it's going to explain a little bit how this becomes more revealed into actual time and space. So let's try to read them. We'll read it and then we'll go through more in depth what they mean. So Essa spheres blima, and that's the way it always starts, that the 10 spheres are without anything, which means we can't grasp it. Achas is Ruach Elokim Chaim. Baruch Shmoi Shel Chayei Olamim. One is called Ruach. So Ruach means, translated would be wind, breath, air. So the first one is Ruach. Once it says it's Ruach, it says Ruach Elokim. So the Ruach Elokim, the spirit, the wind, Ruach Elokim, obviously goes back to Bereshis, the beginning of the Torah, where the Torah speaks about the Ruach Elokim Rachefas Al Pnei Hamayim. That there's a Ruach Elokim, there's a spirit, there's a Ruach, there's a wind, Kaviyachol, of Elokim, Al Pnei Hamayim. So that's the Ruach. This Ruach then becomes broken down into Kol V'Ruach V'Dibur, into sound, Ruach's wind again, and Dibur and speech. V'Zer Ruach HaKodesh, and that's Ruach HaKodesh. I just want to try to say simply what the words mean, then we'll try to understand what they are. Let's go to the next Mishnah. We'll read a few Mishnahs. Shtayim, the second one is, so that's the first sphere. The second sphere, the second emanation, is Ruach Miruach. So the first one is Ruach, is wind itself. The second one is Ruach Miruach. Chaka v'chatzav b'shteim as oisius yisoid. And then from the Ruach of Ruach, there emerges the 22 letters of the Aleph Beis. 3 are the 3 emois. The Sheva Kvulos, the 7 double letters, and the Shtei Pshutais are the 12 simple letters. Ruach Achas Mem, there's only one Ruach. Then Shalish, the third one, Mayim Miruach. The third one is Mayim Miruach. So you have Ruach, wind. Then in Mishnah Yud you have wind that comes from wind. Then water that comes from wind. And Chaka v'chatzav Toyu v'oyer Rafash v'tit Chacham Kamei Aruga will talk about what this is, which is the world of Toyu, which is water. The fourth is Arba is Eish Mimayim. Then you have fire from water. So you have Eish, Mayim, and exactly Mimayim. So the fire, the Ruach creates, the wind creates a wind, the Ruach Miruach. Then there is Mayim, water that comes of Ruach, from wind, and then from fire that comes from water. And then these are the Malachim, these are the angels. So before is Olam HaToyu, the world of chaos, and now it's Olam HaToyu, and now Olam HaTikun, which is the Chayas. And then the final Mishnah, the final 2 Mishnahs, but the final Mishnah of this parak will say that Chamesh, the fifth one, what is the fifth sphere? That's Shalosh Oismir Apshutis, Chasam Roim, that the ceiling, not the ceiling, the ceiling with the S, the chasam, the chosim, to seal, hishlim, that the completion is that you take the 3 letters of Yud, Hey, and Vav. So the Yud, Kei, Vav, there's 4 letters in the name of Hashem, but the 3 original letters, the 3 letters is Yud, Kei, Vav. When you have 3 letters, you have 3 possible tzirufim, 3 possible combinations. So for Oimek Roim, Chasam with the Yud Kei Vav, Then v'chasam b'sheish ksavis upon l'mayla v'chasam b'yud kevav. Then sheish chasam tachas. There was a chesima, there was a ceiling of the lower upon l'mata v'chasam b'yud vav and a hey. The 7th chasam mizrach east upon v'chasam b'hei yud and a vav. Shmoina the 8th chasam mayra upon l'achar v'chasam b'hei vav. And then tisha chasam darim south. Upon l'mina v'chasam b'vav yud. As eser chasam b'tzafin north. Upon the smali, that's the left side of chasam vav hey ka. Like the Nanduim, exactly. Okay, you go, but there's different kavanas. There's exactly a different girsois, exactly how this is. But there's 6 and 6. So there's let's just the Yud Kei Vav, and then the final mission just says that's what happens. These are the 10 spheres, and Ruach Halakim, Ruach Meruach, Mayim Meruach, Eish Memayim, Ruach Moila, Tachas, Mizach, Mayer, Tzaf, and V'Darim. So it completes a cube. Basically, completes a vision of creation, and the way we're looking at creation, the way we're looking at the world is, and the way the spheres are, is that everything comes from Ruach. The origin is all Ruach. That's the Ruach Halakim. That's the origin. That's the spirit, the movement, the Ruach that gives Chayas, the source of life. The Ruach then becomes a Ruach, an actual wind, which is the first sphere, which Ramban we'll see soon. Ramban calls Chachma or the Seichel Elki. There's some type of revelation of Chachma. Then from that there comes Ruach miruach, wind from wind, and then Mayim miruach, and then water from Ruach, and then Eish mimayim, and fire from water. And so you have the 3 basic elements. Sefer Yetzirah doesn't mention the 4th element, which is Yisoid of Offer. And there are Mak writes in the Pardas. The reason why is because the Dal Yisoid is the 4 basic properties: fire, earth, wind, and water. Earth, Offer, is a derivative, comes from Eish, Mayim, and Ruach. And the mashal, the metaphor that the Ramak brings is, for example, if you cook water, if you take fire and you put it under a pot of water, so it uses oxygen, which is wind, the residue of that cooking, there'll be some like little dust things. He said that's the Offer. That's the earth that exists within the 3. So Sefer Yetzirah only mentions 3 of the elements: fire, wind, and water. So you have 4, the Ruach, and then the Ruach, and the Ruach. You have wind, and the wind, and the wind, and then the water, the wind, and then the fire from the water. That's the 4. Now all these things, even though they're elements, since they're coming from Ruach, there's a sense of intangibility. It's not. There's no mamashes. There's no physicality. What's Ruach? Ruach means that it's wind. So Ruach, if you say that everything comes from Ruach, and Ruach is the origin. Then this comes from Ruach, and then the Eish comes from Ruach, and the Mayim comes from the Eish, which comes from the Ruach, and everything's coming from wind. So then, essentially, there is no boundaries to the universe. Everything's just mispashat. Everything just expands. Then, it completes the first parak by saying, but then there was a ceiling. There was a closing, which means the universe is expanding. You have to conceptualize this idea. So you imagine this like this expansion. We'll see soon that the Reb Sadi Gaon talks about it as like a blower creating glass. So you're blowing this glass, and the glass is expanding, right? But everything is just the ruach, and if you just continue blowing, the glass gets bigger and bigger. Then there's a ceiling, which is the 6 ksavos it contains, right? The gvul, the measurement. So the 6 is the Akadosh Baruch Hu Kaviyachol takes the oisis of Yud Kei Vav Kei. We'll see why these particular oisis takes the oisis of Yud Kei Vav Kei, and only the Yud and the Hey and the Vav. And in the Yud and the Hey and the Vav, since it's 3 letters, there's 6 possible combinations, and each combination is a sealant to one of the sides. So what's holding the universe, what's giving its gvul, is a likus, is actually the name of Hashem, which is something to very much to think about. We'll see soon. There's the famous Gemara in Sukkah about this. But this idea is that on one hand you're saying the world is mispashet, and yet the Yud Kei Vav Kei is actually what holds things that's containing it. Okay, the name of Hashem. Okay, so let's go. Huh? What's that? Yeah, everything's from Ruach.
They were calling the limitation.
Yeah.
That's the sphere, not the Tnuah.
Okay, fine. So yeah, fine. But in other words, it's a limitation to the Ruach. In other words, there's a Ruach Halakim. The Ruach Halakim is like this, the glass blower that's blowing, that's expanding, and the Yud Kei Vav is holding that container to make sure that it's a piece of glass. It's not breaking, not shattering. Okay, that's a very fascinating image to think about it, how we think about this world. You look at this world and you see Dvarim Gashmi, you see a very physical world, and you're saying, no, that's actually, everything is just Ruach. Everything just comes in Ruach Elikim. Let's go slowly, step by step.
Different from Cholaponai, let's say?
Why? No, it could be a Tzachal Aponi.
It's the same thing.
Same idea, yeah.
Different.
Yeah, different language. Different noises, yeah. So let's start with the first thing. Esesphere is b'leid ma. Achas, Achas is Ruach. And the Ruach is, what's this Ruach? So if you look at the Ramban on this Mishnah, so the Ramban writes that this Ruach, that is exactly, this Ruach is Nikra Chachma. This is Chachma. She'ein hascholas yeshes ele mechachma shnika achas. That the beginning of the yeshes, the beginning of something becoming material, something becoming physical, that's already from the level of Chachma. And then he says that level of Chachma, which is the first emergence, the first thing that is becoming revealed, that's Elikim Chayim, that's Baruch Uvarech Shmoi Shem Chayim Elam, and that's all those things. Then he says like this: after it says already that the first sphere is called Ruach, it says that this Ruach now has three sounds. Haruach shenikar koil. So everything's really Ruach. Everything's just the wind. There's wind that is now called the koil. That's called the voice. Then there's the mitziyusay, which broadens that koil, which is called Ruach. And then when it's breaking down into actually creation, nikar dibur. And everything's really called Ruach. Everything's really the Ruach. Okay. What does it mean that everything is really the Ruach? Everything is the Ruach. So this koil dibur, this koil Ruach v'dibur. Now, koil and dibur is, in general, the difference in koil and dibur is the way the Tikkun Zohar writes, is the difference between Shem of Hashem and Shem Adonai. The Shem Hashem, Yudke Vavke, is the koil. Koil means the sound. The sound is built in mischalek. There's no yet separation. Once there comes already separation, the world that we see, the way it's duality and binary, there's systems of separation, of multiplicity, of division, that's already through dibur, koich dibur. The koich dibur is what creates separation. It's mechaktach, right? It breaks down things. If I have one voice, let's say that's the kavanah kol shofar, yeah? So the kol shofar, let's say, for example, what's kavanah Baal Shem Tov in Tkiyah shofar? The simple kavanah of the Baal Shem, there's only two kavanahs of Baal Shem on mitzvahs. There's kavanahs Baal Shem on Tkiyas, and kavanahs Baal Shem on mikveh. That's it. That's what the two kavanahs we have from the Baal Shem on a particular mitzvah. And the kavanahs of Baal Shem on Tkiyas, the Alter Rebbe writes it in Siddur, and it's brought in Chesed Avram Malach from the early tzaddikim, from the Talmid of Baal Shem, Talmid HaMagid, bring it down. That what the simple kavanah is, that you're trying to get back to the koil Hashem, which is the place of a person's averos, a person breaks apart and sins. That's the place of dibur, where things started to break apart, where there's this chalkus, where I'm separated from something. In my essence, the essence of who I am is the koil. The koil is the koil of the neshama, which is, that's the place of purity. The tkiyah of the shofar is the ah sound. When a person says ah, what's ah? Ah means that I'm breaking through all the limitations and constrictions of the diburim, which is the place where I did. What did you say?
The inner child.
Yeah. Okay. Fine. And so I'm drinking out. Yeah. That's the tzaka. The tzaka of tkiyah shofar is the koil poshet. That's the koil poshet. The koil poshet is all lakim b'srua, Hashem b'kol shofar. All lakim b'srua, but Hashem b'kol shofar. The Hashem is b'kol shofar. The kol shofar is Yudke Vavke. Now, if you look back in the Bria itself, if you look at the creation itself, there is different ways the Torah describes creation. There is b'dvar Hashem shamayim nasu, that everything was created through speech, that the world was created through speech, asar mamaras nivra olam, that the world was created through the world of speech. And that's simple the way we read the Torah. Vayom Hashem Yod is Or, that Hashem says, let there be light, there's light. So it's a process through speech. The pasuk in Tehillim says, "B'dvar Hashem Shamayim Nasu, u'beruach piv kol tzavav." That is a ruach piv. There's something that's deeper. What's deeper than dibur? Ruach. Like it says in Sefer Yetzirah, right? There's a ruach and there's the dibur. In the second stage of dibur, the ruach itself divides itself in kol, dibur, ruach, v'dibur. The dibur itself is b'dvar Hashem shamayim nasu. That's the world of creation. Beruach piv kol tzavam. With the ruach, Hashem Kaviyachol creates malachim. But then there's even something deeper creation, which is vayipach v'apav nishmas chaim. Eman the nafach metoich nafach. So Hashem blows into his nostrils a breath of life, which is the ruach memala, which the Targum translates. Ruach memala. That vayipach v'hila hadam nefesh chaya, ruach memala, that a person becomes a creation of speech. So it has a ruach of memala. So there's the creation of neshamas, malachim, and oilamus. Oilamus, neshamas, malachim. These are three gedarim. Okay, these are three states, which is the world created souls, angels, and the world and creation. Neshamas, malachim, and oilamus. All these three creations correspond to another way the world was created. The world was created with Dar Hashem Shamayim Nasu. That's oilam ha'asiyah. That's the physical world. That's oilamus. Oilam malachim, the world of angels, was created through Beruach Piv, which is Olam Yetzirah. That's higher, it's the Ruach Piv. Neshamas come from Hevel. Neshamas come from Yipach V'Apam Nishmas Chaim. They come from a Kol Pashat. They come from something that's higher. What's the difference between these three levels? Between Bri, Yetzirah, Asiyah, or between Neshamas, Malachim, and Oilamus? It's not, and this is what the Sefer Yetzirah is really saying, but Oimik, what it's really telling us is, the way we see it, we see them as three separate things. That there's a world, there's the physical world, which you call Oilamos. There's something that's another world, a higher world, that's called the world of angels, Mechzav Malachim, the world of Malachim. There's even a higher world that's called Mechzav Neshamas, right? There's a world of Yetzirah, Asiyah, Yetzirah, and Bria. It's even a higher universe. What Sefer Yetzirah is actually saying here is that in the depth, everything originates from the Ruach. The Ruach, the wind, gives rise to Koil, Ruach, V'dibur. So when you look at the world that's created through Dibur, created through speech, which is Dvar Hashem Shamayim Nasu, you look at the physical world, the depth of that reality, of that physical world, is the world of Malachim. The deeper reality of that physical world is the world of Neshamas. And the deepest world of that reality is actually the Ruach. They're not three separate things. It's three separate grades in consciousness and in Madregas, in revelation. I'll give you very simple language what this means. You have breath, in simple language. You have breath, then you breathe, you breathe, you have breath. The breath rises into your mouth, it becomes wind. And then you use your mouth, the koyach hapeh, which you'll see is the five potentials of the mouth, the chamisha gvuras, and you use the potentials of the mouth to create language, to create words. So words, when you speak, what is actually happening is you're contextualizing, you're breaking apart wind that originates in breath. So when you're speaking words, when you're breathing, when you breathe out, let's say, you're giving a breath out. So that's directly from Hevel outwards. But when you're speaking, you're taking Hevel, you're taking breath, that became wind, using your five potentials of the mouth to speak language. So the language is an expression of the Hevel, the original Hevel. But it comes through, which means it's revealed as something, as Dibur. It's revealed as speech. But the depth of speech is wind, and the depth of wind is breath. You're following? Okay, now what does it mean in levels of states? What this means, levels of consciousness? It's like this. The Olam Asiyah, the physical world, since it's created through speech, it appears to be separate from the Creator, separate from its source. Because what's the definition of a speech? Speech means when you externalize something from the inside to the outside. So if I want to speak to you, I tell you something. If I tell you something, you now have the words that I tell you that's separate from me. That's the definition of speech. I'm speaking outside. I'm giving something outside of from myself to you. I have an idea. I'm sharing it with you. Now, you could take that idea that I shared, something that I said, or someone told you something. You could tell it to a third person now. You could tell it to a third person in such a way that you can actually tell the third person that you created the idea. Someone tells you something very smart, let's say, and you like the idea, so you tell it to another person. You don't tell the person. Person number A tells person number B an idea. Person B tells person number C that idea. Person C doesn't know the origin of that idea. It comes from person A. But let's say, for example, let's say we use an analogy of a person. Let's say I tell you something. I'm person A. I tell you something to person B. You listen to this thing. You tell it to my child. Hopefully my child would say, that's something that my father would say. Something my father would say. In other words, you could say it from yourself, but someone would say, that sounds something like my father would say this thing. What's the shot? The more person C is related to person A, the more they recognize, within the words of person B, they recognize person A. This is the way the world works. The world, Hashem created the world in a way that we don't see the creator in the creation. What we see, if we're blind, we see a speech. Someone said something. We don't know who spoke it. We don't know where the origin of the idea is. But the more we're connected to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the more we relate to Hashem, the more we have a personal relationship with Hashem, the more we can see in the Bria, the Boira. The more we can see in creation, the Creator. But it's possible that a person could be a heretic. A person could be a kofer. How could a person be a kofer? Because that's the way the creation was created. The creation was created in a way that two people could look at the world, and one person could say, Marav Masech Hashem, say how wonderful the works of Hashem, and say, wow, I feel so connected to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And the other person could say, wow, this is interesting nature. Two people look at the same sunset. How? Why? Because one person has a relationship with the Eibusher, and the other person doesn't have a relationship. So if you have a relationship, you say, that's exactly what the Eibusher would do. A person sees Ashkacha Pratis in his life, right? One person says, wow, it's a Gevaldik Ashkacha Pratis, it's a tremendous Ashkacha that I see at Hashem's hand in my life. And the other person says, it's a coincidence. Two people, different experience, because the more you relate, the more you have a relationship, the more you can see within the creation. That's the definition of HaKadosh Baruch Hu creating through the world of Dibur. That's speech. What's Beruach Piv? What is the idea of the wind within the mouth? That's the creation of Malachim. So what's the creation of Malachim? Which is interesting, in the Torah itself, the Torah actually doesn't say clearly the Malachim were created. It doesn't say anywhere in the Torah that the Malachim were created. And the Medrash, there's a machlokes in the Medrash, when exactly were Malachim were created? Were they created b'yom beis? Were they created the second day of creation? Because the second day of creation is already where there's a period, there's separation. Vayavdel, there's a separation, so that's the possibility of Malachim. Or were they created b'yom chamishi, with the chayas? Were they created day 5? What is the definition of a malach? I mean, it's another whole conversation. But what's the simple definition of a malach? A malach, pshat is, what it means is to be a malach, an angel, or a malach, imarav doimel malach Hashem tzavokes. What does it mean to be a malach? A malach means, an angel means someone that's living, something that's living in the world of beruach piv, within the wind within HaKadosh Baruch Hu's mouth. That means it's not outside. The world seems to be outside through Dibur, external world, time and space, physical world, and then we're relating this world to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the Creator. The world of the Mechzav of Malachim is that there's a creation. They were created. B'yom beis and b'yom chamishi. There was a creation. There's a separation. There's something existing outside of itself, outside of the one, but it's still so kolul, so nichlal, so absorbed within the Creator, that it's kaviyachol with beruach piv kol tzavam. That it's a kaviyachol as if within the ruach piv. If a person has an awareness, not that I am connecting to Hashem, but I feel myself being enveloped by Hashem, it's a different type of experience. Like if a person's davening and says, I'm davening to Hashem, I'm praying to Hashem. Okay, and I feel really connected, but sometimes you feel like I'm walking in Hashem's world. It's a different experience. And that sensation of feeling that you're absorbed by the Boira, by the Creator, that is an experience of a malach.
You're saying everybody can
Ma-
become a malach, right?
Everyone can experience what a malach is. Correct. Everyone can experience what the definition of malach. No, I didn't say that. Shaykh, maybe. I mean, I don't know. I don't know if it's inherently.
Experience is what a malach is.
That's what your experience. What a malach is.
Experience that you're a malach.
So when you say Im Hashem Arav Doimel Malach Hashem Tzvokes, the person lives such devekas that they feel the whole time Nichlon HaKadosh Baruch Hu.
So why are they malach?
Maybe they don't feel it all the time. If they felt it all the time, they become the Eliyahu Navi.
Is it a state of dveikos, or it's a
Yes.
It seems like, or it's an in-between state.
It's in between. It's not full devekas.
Right, because the previous ones like you're more nifra.
Correct. It's not mamish devekas. Not yet. It's a malach because a malach is a nivra, so it's not mamish. There's a higher state. That's not about Yetzirah. That's mechzav malachim. There's a higher state. That's in the Lashon of Sefer Yetzirah. There's the dibur and there's the ruach, and then there's the koil. What's the higher level? That's the hevel. That's beruach piv kol tzava. That's v'yibach v'abach nishmas chaim. V'yibach v'abach nishmas chaim is oilman neshamas, is the world of souls. The world of souls is higher than the wind that exists within the mouth of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. It's a different language because it's called pashat. They're all writing that it's called pashat. This word hevel doesn't appear. We'll see soon the Baal Shem. The Shem uses it long. The Dari also does a little bit, but the Baal Shem uses this language much stronger. That the mechzav haneshamas means means that you're not experiencing yourself as something that's separate that exists within the mouth of the Creator. Like you feel overwhelmed. You're in the kishkas in itself. I don't know how to explain this in a better way, but you're mamish. You're it. You're still something. You're still a something, right? Neshama is also a creation. There's a creation, but the creation is even deeper than feeling yourself. Because feeling yourself walking in the world of Hashem, I think a lot of people can experience that. I don't think that it's it's not all the time, but a person can feel like, yeah, this is Hashem's world. I feel like the Eibush is like really, I'm walking in God's world. It's not an unusual sensation. It's possible. Not only am I connecting to Hashem, I feel like, yeah, my life is lived. My life is lived in the presence of Hashem. It's Hashem's world. This is something different. I mamish feel like I'm attached to, like there's no possibility of me separate. Ibur me'imur. Yeah, it's a good example. That's what I feel like. Yeah, the deepest level. But there's still an awareness. There's still an awareness, right? There's still an awareness because there's still an awareness. There's still separation. That's why it's not atzilus.
It's impossible to not have an awareness.
That's why it's Shem and
I'm not so sure if it's impossible to not have an awareness. It's impossible to say that you don't have an awareness, but it's possible to have non-awareness. You could completely slip into something that's beyond you.
So the Rav said,
That's atzilus.
It's something you try to have a person to do.
Yeah, of course. What do you get there? You slip into that. You not do it. You can't do it. You can't push yourself into atzilus. You push yourself into atzilus, then you're still there.
Yourself, then you do it, son.
Correct. You can't. Correct. You have to slip into it. You slip into it. It's complete vekas. What that experience is, every person could. I spoke about this a few times ago. There's atzilus and asiyah, and atzilus and atzilus. One of the type of experience is where you lose yourself. Person listens to music. You have this. People have this experience constantly. You're listening to something that's overwhelming and a beautiful. You're singing by sakumzis of Fabrengen, and all of a sudden you're 10 minutes later. You don't know what just happened. You lost yourself. That's the losing of self-perception of existence. That's a atzilus type of experience. That's higher. That's already dveikos.
the Rav was saying that Shem of Nai as opposed to each story talked about Shem
Yeah. That's even higher. That's the fifth level.
Yeah, that would be.
That's the fifth level.
That's where we are. Yeah,
We're always in the fifth level.
that Mashiach-
We're always in the fifth level. That's quite, we're always in the fifth level. That's not a shadow. Okay, let's look in the Torah Baal Shem. I mean, there's so many things that we can write from the Baal Shem, but this one. I don't know why I picked this piece, but there's in the Magid L'Kutei Yikar Kamat, almost every second page is about this koil and the dibur and the ruach and the Magid. I just saw a whole thing about Tzchein L'Chaim on Rosh Hashanah. But this is just one thing where we see this. Actually, this is not the right piece. Okay. Anyways, this is what he says. Gami tefillah is zacher rura the vadim in hevel hakadosh yitzum piv yistabik zchabim hevel elyon hadavar gav nichzo betminis. That everything really comes to the hevel elyon. That everything originates from the place of the hevel elyon. Okay, that's the language of the Baal Shem. The language of the Baal Shem is the Hevel Elyon. That's what I just wanted to say. It's not so important what he's saying over here, because this is like a practice, how you can connect to the Hevel. But the idea is,
Shouldn't the Ashes have to be Hevel, not Ruach? Also, it's not Ruach.
I don't know if it's a difference. You're saying the word. I agree. It's the different line. I don't think it's a separate thing. I think it means that. It means that. Yeah. Yeah. The Hevel that comes to the. Yeah, of course. That's what I think. I think also the language. You see, he's not the Sefer Yetzirah for whatever reason doesn't use a lot of words. He uses the words that he likes, and that's what he uses. Those words. He could have wrote it differently. I mean, he could have wrote it. Achas is Hevel, and then Mehevel ba Ruach. You could have wrote much more poetic, but I don't know. Yeah, so that's what he wants to write. That's what he wants to write. Okay, let this.
Type of Baal Shem Tov breathwork meditation.
This is the Baal Shem Tov breathwork meditation. That's correct. Yeah, this is it. Yeah, this is the marker for this whole thing. Okay. Stein. Let's see the second thing. So everything comes from the Ruach. So that. Remember, in Sefer Yetzirah we learned before that the 10 spheres are also connected to the oimics, the different depths. This is the oimic rashis. This will be connected to the oimic rashis, which means the beginning. Rashis is rashis chachma. So beginning, the oimic rashis, which is time. Because Zman, like we said before, Zman is the first thing that's created. Before you can create it space, Rashis bar lakim, Es HaShemayim Ves Ha'aretz is already space. Es HaShemayim Ves Ha'aretz is space. Bereshis is Nama Maimerhu, is also a Maimer, is one of the Asar Mamaras. And the creation of Bereshis is Zman, is time. So the first thing that was created is Zman. So Oimik Reshis, now we're going to go to Oimik Achris. What's Oimik Achris? Shtayim. This is the second sphere. Again, he doesn't use the language that we have, which is Bina, but doesn't use that language. Is Ruach Meruach. That Ruach came from Ruach. That's the first. The second one. And then in the Ruach that came from Ruach, Chokak, engraved, V'chotzav, carved, B'esrim V'shtayim Oisius, the 22 letters of the Aleph base emerged from that Ruach. Like we said before, the Ruach is the wind that moves the language, so that's the Ruach, 22 letters, which is Yisoid, is the Oisius Yisoid, it's the foundational letters, and everything is being created through this. Like I'll speak in Perek Beis, everything's been created through these sounds, through these letters. Shalosh Yimos, there are 3 mother letters. Aleph Mem Shin are the mother letters. Sheva Kfulos, there are 7 double letters, which can be pronounced both in a soft variation, in a rafa and a kasha, and a harsh variation, like a beis and a vase, or a gimel and a jimel, or a dalid and a valid, like the Yemenites have. These are the 7 kfulos. V'shtayim esrik pshutis, those are the 22 letters, which you'll see they're also going to be connected to many different things, these 12. The 12 Shvatim, the 12 months, a lot of things will be connected to these 12. V'ruach achas man. But the Ruach is one, there's only one Ruach. Remember, there's only Ruach. There's one wind, there's one koyach, one thing that gives and now refracted and multiplied, that the Ruach comes from the Ruach. But everything is really in the Ruach. Yeah, koyach, correct.
How does a letter ois become created from ruach?
We'll see soon. What do you mean by what? What's the problem?
Once you define it into an us,
It's already defined.
it's already in the level of more towards dibber.
Correct. So look if you look in the Ravid. So the Ravid writes, which is not mamish the Ravid, but from the school of the Ravid. Shtayim ruach meruach pirush asfir ashniyas v'shtayim hu kelel sal yoni ima v'ruach gas meruach gas. So it's a ruach from ruach.
Heavy ruach.
Exactly. It becomes more dense. The ruach becomes the density. Yeah. Kol ma shishdasim ilu misav v'hoylech. It becomes misav v'hoylech. Okay. If you look in the Pirush of Sad Yugon, so Shtayim Ruach Miruach, Shabor Miruchai, Chof Beisoisis Kamoyu, Beloy Yisoi, Beloy Ruach, Beloy Chachma, L'Haskala Eisen. So Kichli Schuches Ayasuya Beneficha. blowing glass. So imagine the glass is being blown, and that's what the creation is. It's a very beautiful mashal. Thinking about creation, that creation is kaviyachol. The boyer is blowing creation into being. Remember, we're seeing the effects of the dibur, of the speech, which is the ruach from the ruach. Beruach, that becomes then all the diburim. So that's what we're seeing. But the deeper level of the truth is that it's actually ruach piv. The deeper level is kaviyachol. The boyer is blowing vayipach va'apav nishmas chaim, not just the neshamas. The neshamas, the souls are just ones that are conscious of that truth. But the truth is that every single nivra, every single thing of creation, is in the depth of its truth, is really the koyach haboyer that's blowing into the creation, like the klis chuchis, like the blower that's blowing creation into being. Kacha oisis nasa meruach hakadosh baruch hu. The oisius, which is like the glass. Glass is really something that's like sand. It's something that's not hard. But when it's blown with fire in the right place, the glass becomes formed. So it becomes misava, becomes thick. Kacha oisius nasa meruach hakadosh baruch hu. V'amar b'amirasa bar Eloh, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu created the world through Amira. V'af tuchel livroya. You should know that you can also create. You can also create. That you should know that the koyach habriya, this power of creation, was given over to you. Because since vayipach v'afach nishmas chaim, and you're connected to the ruach of the L'kim Chaim, you're connected to the source, so you can do the same thing. Exactly. In other words, when this is why the Baal Shem Tov is going to talk this barichas. In Torah Baal Shem, tefillah is creating reality through the speech that you're speaking, through dveikus, recognizing that you're neshama. That's the experience of avir and dveikus. When a person recognizes avir and dveikus, you're doing what Absadi Gon says. So then, when you're speaking out the words of alobes, you say Shema Kalein Rafeinu Hashem. You're creating refuah. That's the speech because you have that koyach of the boyer. Okay, that's the ruach of ruach. Shalish, the third one is mayim ruach. This is water that comes from ruach. Chaka v'chatzav b'hem. So again, there was carving, engraving. Toyu v'voyu refesh v'tit. So it's chaos, confusion. Toyu v'voyu, or toyu boyu. Within a toihu, yematametz tamua. It's a wonder. It's the void. Toihu voyu, mire and clay. Efesh v'tit chakakam, engraved in kimin aruga, like a garden. Hitzivam, he carved in kimin choyma, like a choyma, a wall, and sachacham kimin maziva, sort of like a ceiling, like a roof. So this is the mayim meruach. The mayim meruach. What's the mayim meruach? There's a creation of toyu. Chatzanam toyu v'voyu. There's a creation of chaos. There's a creation of toyu. This creation of toyu, of olam toyu, is corresponding. We said before. There's oimek reishis, oimek achris, the depth of time. Now there's going to be oimek rav, oimek toiv, which is going to be the two opposites. Oimek rav is negative, the negative side, the depth of negativity, the depth of darkness. The depth of darkness is the world of toyo, the world of chaos. That's the world of water. And this is the world of toyo. This is what we really want to understand. What's this world of toyo? And this world of toyo appears to have some kimin, as if it has some structure, has walls and a roof. It's some type of structure. But it's also the world of heder. If you look at the Moshe Butriel, which is from the Rishonim, he writes that what's the toyu voyu? Toyu a heder. And oboyu is the aviyah, that the world stands on the opposites, on these two dynamics, which is the heder and the haviyah, and the chaos, or the absence, the void, and the structure. And it brings off the Gemara speaks in Chagiga about the Kav Yarok and all different types of things where the world is actually founded. Toyo Eretz Ablima, that's something like the world is founded on this world of Toyo. So there's a world of Toyo. The world of Toyo is connected to water. To water. If you look at the beginning of Bereshis, if you look at the beginning of Bereshis, when the Torah speaks about that Ruach Elokim merchafes al pnei hamayim, the beginning of Ruach Elokim was merchafes al pnei hamayim. But who created the water? Where's the water from? Bereshis Elokim is the Shemayim v'Sa'aretz. Abishur created the Shemayim v'Sa'aretz, and then there's also Ruach Elokim merchafes al hamayim. Then there's water. The water. It sounds like the water. What the Torah is trying to say is that the water is primordial. The water represents something that's there's like a universe that came before this universe. And we have to understand what this universe is. Is it real? It's a factual, or is it some type of universe? And there's a layover of this world of chaos, which is the world of water, Olam HaTohu. And the world is founded on this Olam HaTohu. That the world is Vayavda Lakim Ben Amayim Lamoyim. There's a separation. The water separates, it recedes, and then there's the Aretz, and the world. Then the earth appears. Right. That's the way the Torah describes creation, which means that first everything is covering the world. The world is covered by water. And then the water recedes, separates, and then you see the earth. The earth, the Aretz is going to be Olam HaTikun. Okay. Now Olam HaTikun means a place where there's structure and there's orders. Kol ma sheyesh b'yam yesh b'yabasha. Chazal say, right? What does it mean? It means that everything has a parallel to each other. Actually, the Gemara says that there's like there's an akra, there's a shoyer, there's different fish. If you learn the Avodah Zarah, there's a fish that's called an animal. It says that toyer the simon to know if the animal is a kosher animal or not. So the kosher animals on land are not kosher and non-kosher or kosher in fish. But the idea is that everything kol ma sheyesh yesh b'yam. What's the difference between Bayabasha and Bayam? The difference between the Bayabasha and earth and the land versus the water. In the water, everything is one. There's no separation. There's a bilbul, there's a tishtush, at least to our world, the way we see the water. So in our world, the idea of the water is that there's no separation, there's no havdalah, there's no clear. To us, mayim is mayim she'ein lam, right? In halacha, if a person with a guna, if you see water and you don't see land around it, so you'll say it's mayim she'ein lam. What does mayim she'ein lam? Of course, there has a saf, there's an end. But mayim she'ein lam in our world, that represents ein saf. It represents infinity. It represents something that is beyond boundaries, beyond borders. That's the world of Toyu. Then there emerges structure and order. This is a trope. This is something that exists in the entire Torah, where Moshe Rabbeinu Moshe Rabbeinu is Kiman Amayim Mishisu. Moshe Rabbeinu comes from the world of water, and Min Amayim, he's coming from the place of water, from the Olam HaToyu, and he's coming to the Olam HaTikun. Min Amayim Mishisu comes from the world of Toyu. And what is he coming to the world of Toyu? He's coming to the world of Toyu to bring Tikkun. What's tikkun? Torah. That's tikkun. That's called Lasa Shalom Ba'olam. That's through Torah. Torah creates the tikkun in the world. It creates the world of tikkun. So there's the world of water, and then the world that comes out of the water. Let's learn the next shtickle, next two shtickle, and then we'll go on weiter. Arba me'esh. We're gonna have to go a little bit longer soon. The fourth one is from fire. Arba is eish v'mayim. Is fire that comes from water. Now, when there's fire and water, this creates the Kisei HaKavod, and which is Olam HaBriya, which is Srafim V'fanim V'chayis HaKodesh. Srafim V'fanim V'chayis HaKodesh, which are called the Malach HaSharis. These are the three types of Malachim. There are three types of malachim which correspond to Olam HaBri, Yetzirah, and Asiyah. That there are three types of angels. There's Olam HaSrafim, the world of Srafim. Srafim is Olam HaBriya. And they're called Srafim because they're Nisifru Basagasam. That they have such asaga, such type of awareness, that they become burnt in their asaga. Srafim means the fiery ones. That's called Olam that's the malachim of Olam HaBriya. The Olam HaYetzirah is Chayes. Chayes, that's why Chayes, we said that's why, according to the Medrash, one Medrash, that they were created on day 5, which means that they connect to the Chayes. Chayes starts with a Shoiv. That the Chayes represent animals, life, teeming. This is the world of Yetzirah, emotions. That's which is Olam HaYetzirah. And Vaifanim is wheels. A Oifen is a wheel. It's in the Ma'aser Merkava, in the story of the Merkava in Yecheskel, that the Vaifanim represent what's turning this world, Kaviyachol, which is Olam Asiyah. Sandalphon, this is another name of the malachim of they're called the heels or the shoes. This is all the malachim that are turning this world, whatever they mean. The idea is that the structure of the malachim, the structure of angels, where there's this clear structure, there's Olam HaSrafim, there's a world of Srafim, and then there's Chayes, and they find This is an Olam HaBiyah, Abri Yetzirah Asir, which is the Olam HaTikun already. That the world is created, That's already in Olam HaTikun. In the world of Tikkun, this is the order, this is the structure. And from these three forms of angels, HaKadosh Baruch Hu Kaviyachol created his place of rest. And Oisam Malach of Ruchos Mashos of Eish Loyet. That HaKadosh Baruch Hu created Ruchos Mashos of Eish Loyet. That Malachim are created, like the Ramban writes in Shara Gemul, that Malachim are created from Eish and Ruach. There's a big machlokes Rishonim. The Shara Oyer has a long shtickle on this. If the Malachim have Chomer, if the Malachim have any substance. Of course, the Rambam says no, because the Rambam has a whole shit about Malachim that are very different, especially in the Moira. Nichos Yisrael Torah writes, there's a 10 different Dargas Malachim, but in the Moira he has a very clear shit of what Malachim are. That they're not a thing, it's not a thing. The Ramban clearly says that they are a thing, but what are they? And they're creations. So if they're creation, we say that everything created has the four properties: Eish, Mayim, Ruach, and Afar, fire, wind, earth, and water. Not like what we translate fire as fire, wind, but whatever fire represents, what these elements represent. What is Malachim? So the Ramban writes that Malachim are created from Ruach and Eish. So if you have wind and fire without earth and water, what you have is something that's intangible. Right? If you take wind and fire, these are the intangible of the elements. So you have like a silhouette or some type of a vision of something, but you can't actually touch it. When it speaks about that the Malachim appear to Avram Avinu Kaviyachol in the Torah, not according to the Rambam, but according to the Ramban and others, and the Sha'ar writes that Malachim can be vested, they can be malbush themselves into the Dal Yisodis. So they appear within the Dal Yisodis. But that's correct. So it's okay, exactly. So since they have that, they can also come to the Maimer. They can come in. Okay, that's together Malachim. So what you have now is you have the world of Mayim Miruach, and Eish Miruach. You have the world of Toyu, and then the world that's more Metukin, which is more structured order, which is the three. Okay.
Does this comply with the idea that Malachim's thoughts?
What?
Is this complying with the idea that Malachim come from thoughts?
That's a separate. That's part of that. It's part of that. There's two types of malachim. There's malachim that are created, and the malachim that we create. Two separate malachim. Yeah. Yeah. Achamaderya. Yeah. Yeah. The higher Maderya. Yeah. Okay. So let's understand this. So what you have is that everything comes. Let's go back to the beginning. Everything's coming from ruach. Everything's coming from wind. Yet the world appears to be solid, right? Things seem to be tangible and solid, but everything comes from ruach. So we say that what creates the solidity? What creates the gashmis, the mamashis of things? That's the ceiling. That's Mishnah Yud Gimel. That the Yud Kevav, the Yud and the Hey and the Vav, these are the sealing things that seal things out. This is the world that is defined, that is structured, that is ordered. To say it a little bit different, this is Olam HaTikun. This is the world of Tikkun. So when you say something is sealed, it's sealed, there's something outside of that, or something before it. It's sealed from. What's the outside force that it's sealed from? That's Olam HaToyo. Let's look first in the Gemara. So there's a famous Gemara about David HaMelech. The Gemara says, at the end, in Sukkah, in Gimel, the Gemara talks about the Shittim, and you have the Nischamayim, Nischayayim. So it says, B'shal Shekara David Shittim. So the Machlokes in Gemara, when the Shittim were Nivru, Shittim were these holes that went all the way down. Were they created in the beginning of creation, or David HaMelech created them? So what this opinion says that David HaMelech was the one that, when he was building the Beis HaMikdash, he built these shittim. He built these long tunnels. Kafa Tohaima. So when he broke open a certain place, the last two lines of the Gemara, the Gimel and Aleph, and it says Kafa Tohaima, the Tohaim, the abyss, started rushing up. So the water started rushing upwards. And it was going to overflow the world. So he touched like the underbelly, the undercurrent of creation. Like he went to the root of the Tahoim, which is like to the Olam HaToyo, we'll see soon. And he opened something up, and that was flooding upwards. This mine was flooding upwards, and it was going to destroy the world. Do we know, if anyone knows, if you're allowed to write the name of Hashem? and to stop it. No one said anything. So David the Melech said, "Call the yad in the meimer. Ve'ena omer yichageg b'groinoi." She gets stuck. Obviously, that's a metaphor of the opposite of overflowing, so getting stuck. He should choke. So he took the made a kavachomer, and he said if you take the name of Hashem to race it by the soita, so certainly you can take the name of Hashem to put it in the Tehom, and that's how the Tehom went down, and it went down 16 things. David Melech then lifted up Chamesh Milas to Shir Amalas. Okay, what is the Gemara saying? The Gemara is saying is that there is, it's literally what the Sefer Yetzirah is saying, that there's a world of Torah that's percolating underneath everything. This, sometimes you crack it open, and when you crack it open, it's going to overflow the whole world. So what holds the world in its structure and allows everything to function correctly is the Yud Kei Vav Kei, is the name of Hashem. The name of Hashem is the one that is the shame that holds everything in its right place, which is Olam HaTikun.
Only the kavachomer if you know the word.
Huh?
It's only a kavachomer if you know the
Yeah,
word.
exactly. Yeah, I guess. Yeah, exactly. Maybe new Sefer Yetzirah. Yeah. Okay. Let's go back to the beginning of the creation. In the Bria, we're talking about the creation, Sefer Yetzirah. So the Torah speaks about different languages. When the Torah speaks about creation, there's Vayas, Vayotzar, right? There's different words that the Torah uses to create. Hashem formed, Hashem created, Hashem spoke. The Torah uses 3 times the word bara. And the Ramban writes that this is a Bria Shmai. This is like a real majestic creation. 3 times the Torah writes Bria. Bereshis bar Elokim, Bria. And Vayivras Adam. Adam was created, which is that he comes Nishos Chaim. He has and the second thing, the middle thing, is the Taninu Agadol. Taninu Agadol. These great whales, sea monsters, Leviathan. We're not sure what they are. What is these? What is this Taninu Agadol? What are these Taninu Agadol? And we're not going to get into fully what this means, but a little bit to understand what they are. So the pasuk in Tehillim, it also appears in Tehillim, and it also appears later in Eiv, appears in Yeshaya also, Yecheskel. But in Tehillim, in Perek Ayin Daled, you have it over here. And Elokim Malki Mekedem Po Yeshua B'Karav Haaretz. Elokim is Malki Mekedem, the Kadosh Baruch Hu is Malki Mekedem, the king from the ancient times. Poel Yeshua is B'Karav Haaretz, the Kadosh Baruch Hu is Poel Yeshua, creates Yeshua in this world. Ata Ferata Ba'azcha Yom, Shibarte Rosh Saninim Alamoim. You're the one that calmed the waters, the raging waters, and you broke the heads of the Taninim, of these great sea monsters, sea serpents. Tanim, which literally means alligators. So the Taninim Alamoim, says Rashi. And then it says, after it's after Rosh Leviathan, Tenedel Machalam Letziyim, you also broke the head of Leviathan. When did HaKadosh Baruch Hu break the Taninim Agadol? Where was the breaking of the Taninim Agadol? Where do we have in history that HaKadosh Baruch Hu, first of all, is Loichem, the Tanim Agadol, HaKadosh Baruch Hu fights with the Tanim? Like, why is HaKadosh Baruch Hu fighting with the Tanim? Leviathan Zartel Sachik Boy. What is this battle with the Tanim? So Rashi writes, Rosh Taninim, Him Mitzrim, Shnikr Taninim. This refers to the Mitzrim, like it's to the Egyptians, like it says in the Pasuk Yecheskel, that that in Yecheskel was talking about the Pari Nechia, which is the Pari that lived in his times. Not talking about Pari that lived thousands of years ago in the Torah, but Pari that lived in times of Yecheskel. If you're familiar a little with the story, the Churban Bayis Rishon is that the Mitzrim promised Klal Yisrael that they're going to fight against the Babylonians, and that's why. And then the Navi said that don't trust them, and Yirmiyahu Navi said don't trust them, and then there was Hanani ben Azor said do trust them. It was a big debacle. And Lepoel the Mitzrim did not trust them, and the Babylonians, the Nebuchadnezzar came and destroyed Eretz Yisrael. The Torah, Yecheskel laments the fact and speaks very negatively about this pare, And he says, you're a Tanan Agolo, you're this big fish, this big dragon, this big alligator that roams, who roams the Nile. So Rashi says, when it says that HaKadosh Baruch Hu broke the Tanan Agolo, Shibarta Rosh Hashanah is talking about the Milchama, the war that Hashem created against the Tanan Agolo. And who's the Rosh Leviathan? Who's the head of the Leviathan? Pare. That's also Pare. So the Metzudas writes, Sarav Vishloshav Al Shapar Nikol Leviathan. There's the Tanan, which is the great serpent, the great alligator. It's not an alligator. What's it's not crocodile? It's not alligator. It's crocodiles. Eretz Yisrael used to have crocodiles.
The Nile crocodile.
Yeah, crocodiles. Even Eretz Yisrael, before in the 1800s, Eretz Yisrael was full of crocodiles. Today, I don't think there's crocodiles in Eretz Yisrael. Maybe in the zoo, but there's not. It used to be swamps, and they had full of crocodiles. So the crocodile, this big crocodile. So there's the Tanan Agol is the great crocodile, which is Pare, and then the Leviathan is the Sarim of Pare. What does this mean? Huh?
Doesn't the Quran Lashon have to sound like human consciousness?
Yeah. Okay. So what? Yeah, I agree. So I just want to understand what that is. Okay, let's go to the next psukim. I just want to understand this. So we don't know. Let's see if we can make a little bit sense of this, and to understand this, I'll be a little bit more pneumius. Let's go to the psukim in Eiv. I didn't want to write the whole psukim in Eiv. You have to make copies of the entire. But in Eiv, you know the story of Eiv. Yeah, everyone knows the story of Eiv. The story of Job. The story of Eiv is that he was a very wealthy man with a lot of family, and this and the Satan came, and this whatever things went bad, and the people came to Eiv to menachem him, to give him comfort. His friends came to him, Elio and others came to him, and they told him, tzaddik v'tovlei. How come he's a tzaddik v'ralei? How come he's a tzaddik and things are not working out for him? So of course the two simple excuses is, if you're a tzaddik and v'ralei, what do you say? What's the two things you say? Either you're not a tzaddik, or it's not really ra. That's the easy way to do it, right? So that's what they tell Eiv. First of all, you think you're such a tzaddik, you're not such a tzaddik. And then they say, you think it's ra, it's not so ra. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu comes at the end and says, no, you're both wrong. Eiv is taka tzaddik, and this is very big ra. I, tzaddik v'ralei. Vayan Hashem es Eiv, hasar v'yomer, miza machshech eitzav v'milim lidas. Who's the one that speaks like this? This is what the pasuk song is. He says, where were you in the beginning? He created the world. This is what the Eibusher introduces himself, Kaviyachal, to Eiv, and says, what do you understand? Were you there when you created the world? And he explains all the different things about creation. It's basically like he picks him up and he shows him the world. This is the story of Eiv. In the middle, it says, Timshech leviyasim b'chaka b'chevel tashkil l'shoynei. And then it goes on, and this is the psukim that over here, it says like this. Mi gile pnei levusha b'kefel risan miyave, dalse ponem mi pesach svivo shina v'ema. Who opened up his mouth and to see his raging teeth. Atishoisav tall oir, his eyes, when he moves, he projects light. Ve'enov ka'afapei shachar, and his eyes have these strong lights that come out of them. Bipiv lapidim yeholoichu, and from his mouth there's like fire that exits his mouth. Minechir of Yetzirah Oshan, from his nose there's like big winds. Kedud nafuach v'agmen, like something that's blown up, like fire. This sounds like a very scary dragon or something. If you're familiar with dragons, if not, it's not what I get. But this is the Chazal called a darkoin. If you're learning more of a desire, there's a desire called darkoin. What is this? What are you talking about? What's going on over here? There's a HaKadosh Baruch Hu shover and breaking this big monster, doing milchama with this monster. Who's this monster? What's meant us? So let's go to understand this a little bit like this. Alter Rebbe writes in Torah in Shmois, brings down from Sefer Atmuna. We learned this Maimer of Parshas Shmois, if you remember. Vayom Hashem Misam Pel Adam says like this. In the Isa Sefer Tmuna, it says in Sefer Tmuna. Sefer Tmuna is one of the Sefarim, early Sefer Kabbalah, Sefer Kana, Sefer Tmuna. It's an early time period, early. Shezeh Olam Hu Shmita Shniya Lufaneh Hayigam Kim Shmita Achas Shein Shachas Midas Aches V'Shmita the Achshav Hu Midas Apachat, which is Gvura. That you should know that there's different Shmitas. There's cycles of 7, and there was an earlier cycle of 7. Just like the world is a cycle of 7. Shita Alpha Shnin Chat Choroif. Like the Gemara says, each day, like the Ramban writes, of creation corresponds to 1,000 years of creation, the 7 days of creation. So you should know that this is already the second Shemitah. There was a first Shemitah, there was the first cycle of 7, which is from the world of Chesed. This cycle is from Gvuras. It says that's why, the Sefer Tmura writes, that's why, that's why we're experiencing the Churbanos in this world. There was a Midas HaChesed, v'gam HaTorah b'efen acher. This is what the Sefer Tmuna says. The Torah that we had, in the Torah, there was a different, higher level of Torah that existed in the Shemitah first. So this is what it says in Sefer Tmuna. But you should know, Arizal Polag al Zeh, the Arizal argues in this. And he says that we have to read this, the Sefer Tmuna, not literally. What it really means is that there is the Olam HaToyu, that when it says that the world was created by Beis, with 2, it means that there was a Shemitah Aleph, Achshav Shemitah Shniya. Not that there was a physical cycle of 7, and this is the second cycle of 7 in the physical world. That world was the world of Toyu. And that world of Toyu came before the world of Tikkun, which means that there was a world of Chesed. In Sefer Tmuna, it speaks about the 7 cycles. It says that the 7 cycles, the 7,000 cycle, there's 7 cycles of 7,000 cycles. This is in the second cycle of 7,000. There's a machlokes even between those svarim, if it's the second cycle or the 5th cycle. Well, let's say it's the second cycle. Now, Rizal came along and said, we shouldn't read this literally. That when you say that the cycles of the 7, doesn't mean that there was a cycle of 7 in the physical reality. The physical reality we have today, our physical world, is the first cycle of the 7, the only cycle of 7. And when it says that there was an earlier cycle, that was the cycle of Olam HaToyu, the world of chaos. What was that world of chaos? That world of chaos was the world of Chsadim. It was Chesed. Now Chesed is mine. That was the world of water. That was the world of Toyu, which is the world of water. That's why it's brought down also in early Sefer Kabbalah. That dogim, fish, the Gemara says, in Chol Chav Zayin, the Gemara says that fish, asifosim zu shchitasim. Fish do not need shchita, not to be ritually slaughtered, right? Doesn't need shchita. It's a malchai. Why does it need shchita? So Chazal say that it's all a pasuk, it's there from a pasuk, and then Chazal say that's sifosim, just by gathering, that's the shchitasim. But Sefer Kabbalah said that the reason why is because ein v'shchita el v'mashach, ein v'shachat el v'mashach. The shchita means an elevation, a tikkun. Since fish come from Olam HaToyu, which is the Olam HaChasadim, the world of water that comes from the previous reality, they don't need to go through this bir. That's the same reason why it says that rewrites, and also brought another svarim that rewrites that tzaddikim are nizgalgal and fish. Why? Because since they come from Olam HaChasadim, they don't have that same. They don't need to go through the same birurim, the same type of birurim. Yeah, so you can fish on Shabbos, correct? That's the Baal Shem got to move to Mezhebush, because the Baal Shem said because it's a lake and you can get fish. So that was the ikir reason why the Baal Shem moved to Mezhebush. There's a big there's a Beis Hillel, not Beis Hillel, the place in Beis Hillel, the Tainas, that to eat fish on Shabbos is a chiyuv in deraisa. Alter Rebbe quotes in Shulchan Aruch. Eating fish is a very important thing. Okay, this is even more than the meat, maybe. But fish is for sure you have to eat on Shabbos. So the idea is that the fish comes from Olam HaToyu, which is Olam HaChasadim. Okay, that's one part. Let's go a little further. Chesed and Gvura. That's the way the order of the universe. In other words, if the Shemitah Shniya, that he's saying what Sefer Tmura writes, the Shemitah Shniya, it's true, just not begashmis.
So why is Chesed Toy?
Because no, first comes Olam HaChesed, then there's no Gvul. That's simple. There's no Gvul. It's only Shefa. There's no Gvul. It says that there's only pure. It's only one. No, that's what he said. No, he says that no. Olam HaTorah means it's a world. There's a conception of the reality of the world. By the way, in science, not to get to this, science say that fish. I don't know if you're familiar with this, but whatever you do. The fish is actually actually one of the earliest. Everything comes from fish, which is actually al pi Kabbalah emes.
Also, the Aries collapse in the entire structure of Sefer into like a binary. Isn't it saying like a 7 cycle?
Yeah, binary. Correct.
Which is not very pessimistic. It's like only the second cycle.
Right.
He says that basically eternity is really just chesed work.
Correct. Yeah, that's correct.
Is not going to be another 5?
No, this is it. This is Mashiach will come.
We're now in the Gevurah, or we're now already by...
We're in Olam HaTikun, and this it's a tzir for Gvura, and in the Tikun, that's it. That's it. That's the end. Okay. The Alter Rebbe has a maimer in Parsha Shmini L'Vyosan Zel Yitzhak L'Schach. Brings on the Gemara about the Leviosan that HaKadosh Baruch Hu has a kinuk. The Gemara says in Bava Basra, Ayin Hey, the famous Gemara, and the Gemara writes that Rav Pinson is Gnuzim in that story. But the Alter Rebbe writes that the difference in Leviosan is that in Leviosan, the Madrega of Leviosan B'Pnimius, is that there's a tzaddik that's called a tzaddik minister, the Miyacha Yechudim, Kamei Rashbi, Shoy B'Meyer, Shabalo Yochel L'Kayim B'Maisa, that Rashbi wasn't able to do B'Maisa. He wasn't able to do physically actions in the Meira. For 12, 13 years he was there. He wasn't able to make Kiddush, he didn't have the Gemara only says that he had a Ma'ana Chruvim, that's it, but nothing else. So he didn't have Esrig and Sukkah. So that's the Bechina of tzaddikim that are benister, that are hidden. That's Leviosan, Pnimius. And then when the end he writes in the next column, it talks about this idea of there's two types of Hamshacha, which is Yichud of Zun, which through generally Torah mitzvahs, what you're doing is a Yichud of Kutsha Brichu Shchinte, which is Zal Malchus. Hamshach Yichud Ava, which is Abba V'Ima, which is the higher level of Yichud, who Hamshach is Chodesh, which is Anayar Chodesh. Me'ein Seif Baruch Hu, that's your Mamshach then you're drawing down from the Ein Sof. Who are they Mesiris Nefesh? That's through Mesiris Nefesh. And through Dafka, through the Mesiris Nefesh, that's the higher Madrega of a Pam Yuva Alai, which is the Madrega of Leviasan. That's the higher Madrega of Leviasan. What is he saying? He's saying is like this. There's a Zohar Kodesh writes in Parshas Boy, and maybe we'll understand what these Tan Nagadol is. The Zohar Kodesh writes in Parshas Boy Lateva. So Zohar says Boy, Lech. It should have said Lech al Pare. Boy al Pare means you should come to Pare. When you tell someone to go somewhere, you don't say Boy come. You say go. You should say Kadosh Baruch Hu should tell Moshe Rabbeinu Lech al Pare. You should go to Pare. Why say Boy al Pare? So the Zohar writes that Moshe Rabbeinu was scared. And why was he scared? Because he was scared to approach Pare, because Pare is the Tana Agol Harib Seich Yarav. He's the great crocodile that roams in the Nile. And Pare is Meloshin the Spariu the Chol Nehurin. Pare comes from the word the Spariu the Chol Nehurin, which is the exposing of all the highest lights. And Moshe Rabbeinu was scared to approach him. Why was Moshe Rabbeinu prepared to approach him? And Dafka in the Parshas Boy. So the teretz is that Moshe Rabbeinu comes from Olam HaToyu, from Mayim, from the Shemitah Rishonim. Moshe Rabbeinu was told to take Klal Yisrael and to give them what? Torah. What does it mean to give them Torah? Order, structure, din, not din to give boundaries, to give gvulim. And then in Parshas Boy, there's a Dumadrega, a new thing that has to happen. That Eibusha tells Moshe Rabbeinu that it's true that you're taking Klal Yisrael out of all these places and you're bringing them to a place of din and structure and order, and that's you're going to give them Kabbalah the Torah. I want you to do one last thing. I want you to go to the belly of the beast. I want you to go to Pare, to the Tanan HaGadol, and I want you to draw from Olam HaToyu into Olam HaTikun. I want you to take from Olam HaToyu the Oiris of Toyu, the Sparid, the Chol Nehurin, which is everything is exposed and everything is bispashas, everything is bigadol, is big, and I want you to draw that oil now also into Klal Yisrael. And Moshe Rabbeinu says, I can't do this on my own. For this I need you. I can't do this on my own. Because I come from that world, and I come from that world as Dafka Mirmayim Mishisu. I went out of that world to come to Olam HaTikun, to bring Tikkun. Now you're telling me to go back into Olam HaToyu. There's the Tanan HaGadol, however we understand it, is there's in avodah, this means that there's the world of order, the world of structure, which is all the world of tikkun, which is the world of maturity. Where I'm mature, I know what I have to do this morning, I know what I have to do in the afternoon, I know when I have to do mincha, I know what I have to do shachas, I know when I put on tefillin, I know I have to go. I'm a sudadik person. But underneath everything, in the beginning of everything, and the root of everything is Olam HaToyo. Everyone comes to the world of Toyo. What's Olam HaToyo? Olam HaToyo is when you're young, when you're in your youth. Sumish, Mevulvul, Toyo, you don't know where you're flying, what you're doing, but you have a lot of koyach then. You have a lot of energy. You're very creative and very passionate and you're with a lot of koyachas. And then when you turn 50, 60, whatever, you turn older, you become metuka and everything's in order and structure. You know what you can do for the next 100 years of your life. Everything, the side of all creativity, the side of all movement is from Olam HaToyo. The Olam HaTikun, the way the Sefer Yetzirah contrasts is there's the Olam HaToyu and then there's Olam HaMalachim. The Olam HaMalachim is very structured. The Srafim, Chayas, Mefanei HaKodesh, everything is structured. That's the structured world of spirituality, of Ruchnius. And then contrast that is the Olam HaToyu, which is the chaos, which is the bilbul, which is confusing, which is a lot of energy, a lot of koyach, but not metukan, not structured. Underneath, anytime a person has a creative impulse to grow, to become, to do something in their life, it always comes from Toyu. Because Toyu is not defined. Toyu says, I don't know what it's going to be. Okay, so I'll figure it out. Let me try to do something. Tikkun says, I know exactly what it's going to be because I know what yesterday was. You can't have avodah of tikkun if you don't have an understanding of how you can draw boil, how you can harness the koyach of Olam HaToyo. In the Lashon of the Alter Rebbe, if you want to create the yichudim of Zun, the yichudim, which is the orderly structure, then you have to do Torah mitzvahs. That's the structure. But sometimes you need to, if you want to draw down from the Ein Sof, because you need koyach Ein Sof, you need infinite sources. He says you need the koyach Mesiras Nefesh. The koyach Mesiras Nefesh is Olam HaToyo and Avodah. The koyach Mesiras Nefesh means I'm not thinking lying on top of das. I'm not making a cheshbon. I have to do this and I have to be here and I have to do that. If something calls for me and I have to do it, I'm throwing myself into this. It's not seichel, and your wife is going to tell you you're crazy. But the only way you can that's the only way to bring to harness the Olam HaTikun, the Olam HaToyu in the Olam HaToyu, in the Olam HaTikun. You have to draw. Yes. Yeah, you have to bring the Toyu into the Tikun. And this is the Muhammad and the Tanna Gadol. When the Torah talks about the Bria, the Torah is saying there's the Bria Sa'adam, which is Olam HaTikun, and then there's the parallel, which is the Olam HaTohim. There's the Koyach, which Moshe Batriel calls the Koyach HaHeder. There's the power of chaos. There's the power of order, which structure, which is the Bria of the Adam, which is in constant battle with the Koyach of chaos in the world. And the chaos of the world represents, what's the embodiment of that chaos? That's Parei Revis Pesach Yarov. That's the embodiment of the Tanna Gadol. When Kodesh Baruch Hu does the battle with the Tanna Gadol, the battle of the Tanna Gadol is not to destroy the Tanna Gadol. It's faket. What does Eibush do with the Leviasan Las Lave? It's Asudul Tzadikim. And what does Eibush take? It takes the oil of Leviasan and becomes the sukkah. Which means you're taking that oil with an ayin, but also oil with an aleph. You're taking the oil of Leviasan and you're drawing it into tikkun, loss of love, because ultimately the Tanna Gadol has to be overcome. The Tanna itself we have to do battle with the Tanna. Eventually there has to be Leviasan the Sachik, but there has to be a Melchama between the Tanna Gadol and the Shreya Bar. There has to be this Melchama. And the Melchama has to end with the ingathering, the tikkun of the oil of Leviasan. That's why in the Nevi'im, when they talk about the La'asilave, the future, there is going to be this great battle that Leviasan is going to have to be destroyed, but it's not destroyed in a way that it's destroyed and it disappears. But you take actually the koyach of the Leviasan and you draw it down into your personal avodah. bin negel in yanenu. What it means is actually in our own life, what it means is that the undercurrent, and this is why in the way Sefer Yetzirah like develops this idea, is that there's koyach heder, koyach aviyah. Right? There's these two forces in this universe. There's the world of chaos and the world of structure, world of order. The world of tahoim and the world of like, I know exactly what I have to be doing. That's the malachim, and that's the order, and that's the structure. But he says that, but if you look at the creation, everything comes from ruach. The ruach miruach, the mayim miruach is the beginning, is the foundation, the water, which is olam hatoyu, which gives rise then to eish memayim. The eish memayim, which is the din, right? Eish is the din, comes actually from mayim, comes from the world of chsadim, comes from the place of the toyu. The tikkun only emerges from toyu, creativity comes from toyu. Passion, desire, all comes from olam hatoyu. Our tafkid, our purpose is to marry these two things and draw down from the olam hatoyu into the olam hatikun.
Or is it Torah Kiyam
Exactly. Oiris the toyu and kelim tikkun. That's really that's the end game. The end game is to take the oiris the toyu, the raw oiris the toyu, the passionate and use it in a serious nefesh. You say I don't have any passion anymore, and passion comes with you know, with sometimes lack of responsibility or lack of order, lack of structure, and I can't be so passionate because I have the responsibility. And I have to, you know, I need to provide for my family, and I have 1,000 excuses why I have to be orderly the whole time. Do a little Mesiras Nefesh of one type of avodah that you have in your life, and you'll have passion again, and you can bring that passion. That's the drawing. That's the boil para. That's the Muhammad of Atan Magalu. That's what Kaviyachol. The big story is Kaviyachol. Is Hakadosh Baruch Hu is doing Muhammad with the Tan Nagalu. It's a real story. It's not a silly story with a dragon and some type of mythology. It's a real story because the undercurrent of reality is these two huge forces in the world. In the Lashon of Hashem is also, it's a chesed gvur that exists, or usually the hevel elyon between the in breath and out breath, which is the koyach heder, koyach aviyah, and the tafkid of yid is to draw these two things together and create some type of harmony between these things, and that's how we create proper yichudim in our lives.
Fair to say that today is Olam Hatoyu, that is breaking the whole boundaries. It's a time of Mashiach.
Amos that you're saying something very deep in Amos. Because before the new higher level of tikkun has to be toyu. You have to get to a higher level of tikkun, right? To get to a higher level of tikkun, you need toyu.
And then today's movement is breaking the boundaries between
Amos
everything.
That's the positive. That's the
Very bad.
that's the positive side of what's going on in this world. That's correct. To be solid to a higher level of tikkun. Klar? Oh. All right. Ma'ariv? Shkoyach Mendy. Worked?
Just needed somebody else to move.
Need a little time.
They didn't do nothing. Just